Let's do it.
All right. Welcome back to the Reckless CEO podcast. Got a good friend of mine in here today, Mr. JL Holdsworth. Man, I'm excited for this one, dude.
Thanks for having me, brother. Looking forward to it.
And JL is a world record holder, CEO, founder of the Spot Athletics, creator of the precognitive optimization.
Yeah.
That's a big word.
Yeah, lots of big words.
It sounds scary too, right?
I mean, only if you think being awesome's scary. Man.
No, I love that, man. JL, I'm super excited to have you in here today, man. I appreciate you coming in. I know you're a busy guy, so thanks for the set a little time aside and come in and share your story, man. It's you and I have got to know each other the past year or so, and that's been an incredible experience. You've done work with the team and all of our guys too. So, man, I'm excited to share the impact that you've had on my life, and just to really help you kind of get that message out there. I think there's a lot of people that need to know more about you.
Well, I think, man, the world that we live in, it's funny. It's never been physically more safe as far, right? We're not going to leave CRC and a lion's going to attack us or anything, right? But our precognitive state, when we think about it, like our cognitive is neck up. It's what we think. We know it's safe, right? But our precognitive neck down is hardwired to constantly look for threats to help us survive. I mean, that's how we beat saber-toothed tigers and all these big, right?
Yeah.
And so that neck down is scanning your world all day for threats, and it's a story-making machine. So you have a time where it's never been physically safer to live, and yet we live in a time where people are more overwhelmed, stressed, anxiety's never been higher, right? And so people are just feeling overwhelmed. And the large part of that is because their systems are telling them that they are under threat, and there is no threat.
Yeah, I love that. Before we even get into that, tell me this about, we've obviously evolved as humans, right? We've continued to evolve. I mean, how is it that our neck down is so unevolved still, and is that something that's continuing to evolve? Like, how does that, are we getting closer to less risk or less of the anticipation for what's to come? Like you said, saber-tooth tiger, right?
Yeah.
That hasn't been here for centuries, but we're still wired that way.
Yeah, so I think when you look at it, right, if you put a fish on dry land, how long would you expect it to grow legs? That'd take a few years, right? So we're the same way. It's evolution. Evolution takes millennia, right? But we've changed our environment. So when you think about it, right, literally as 5,000 years ago, we were hunters and gatherers. 5,000 years, 10,000 years ago, people just started traveling around the world. So when you look at the evolution of time and our systems, it hasn't been that long. I mean, if you think about it, only in the last 150 years have we moved from agrarian society of farmers into industrial revolution. Yeah. So a fish isn't going to grow legs in 150 years, right?
Right.
And so, I think our nervous systems will eventually evolve. But when I talk about that precognitive state, one of the things to think about it like this is, from your neck up, it's what we consciously think. And if you look at that system, it can process 60 bits of information a second, which sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
However, from our neck down is something called neuroception. And our neuroception, our precognitive state, it processes 11 million bits of information a second.
Wow.
And so when you think about it, right, if I put my hand on a hot stove, I don't go, I wonder if my hand is burning. Is that my flesh I smell? Right? You put your hand on, boom.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're hardwired, evolutionary, to be able to survive those dangers. And so it's a great thing that we're that way. And with what I teach, it's actually how to leverage the mechanisms behind that precognitive state to stabilize and have proper neuroception so you can remain calm, you can be enjoyable. And a lot of people talk about the flow state. We've all had days where everything goes the way we want it to. We know what's going to happen next. We're just accomplishing goals. Everything's easy and enjoyable. Yeah. Then we've also had days where the harder we work, the further we get from whatever it is, right? The whole day goes by and we haven't accomplished anything, right? Yeah. So what I tell people is it doesn't, and I deal with people all aspects of life, right? From somebody who just wants to have less stress and anxiety in their life and they're a business owner, to people who are professional athletes, to special operations in the military, all kinds of different multi-billion-dollar companies I work with. regardless of how successful you are, everybody has excessive tension in some area of their life that's like, it's almost like an anchor weighing you down. And so what I teach with precognitive optimization is a skill set of how to cut that anchor loose and get rid of that tension.
That's good.
And what's amazing is you actually do this through shifting a process called internal tension mapping. And when you do this internal tension mapping, you go through and synchronize your mental, physical, and neurological states. And then it puts you in that amazing place where life's just happening easily and effortlessly. And that's, for me, man, that is not how I used to live life.
Right. I was going to, that's kind of the next question, right? It's like, we're obviously jumping in super high level. Right?
Super high.
And, I think when people look at you, right, and then you start to speak these things and talk about all these things, it's, you didn't come out the womb looking to learn about optimization of the consciousness.
No. So, like for me, and this is the thing right now, here's a great question. Okay, so I know podcasts, you're supposed to ask me questions, but I don't follow rules. So for anybody who's listening to the podcast who does personality tests, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're familiar, DISC test, right? Like
very high, very high D, very high I, very low S and C for me.
Yeah, my D is a 100. So when I took the test, the person was like, "I've never seen a 100," right? Like I take cultural index, predictive index. My A is off. It's an arrow, which basically means I'm higher than 1% of 1%, and that's like your aggressiveness, like your drive. And then on the other side, I have an arrow the other way, which is my desire to follow rules. And so my desire to follow, it's off the charts low. And so, which is why I think you and I get along so well, right? And so what I would say, right, is for you, how would you define success? Because this is one of my all-time favorite questions. So I'm going to use your podcast to ask you. How would you define success?
Man, I think it's changed over the years. Right? When you're young, you think, and I think even when I started the business, right? To me, success in starting a company was that, I want to have money and I want to have resources and I wanted to be out of the position that I was in. That's what success looked like for me. And I wanted to be popular and I wanted to be famous and I wanted to be all these things, right? Because I think that's what society almost feeds into you of what success is.
For sure.
Well, now that I've grown and developed and, for me now, success is the ability to enjoy my life and not have restrictions to the things that I want to do and the relationships and the people that I want to spend time with. When I think of financial freedom, it's the ability to do what I want, when I want, with whoever I want. And to me, that's what success is. And being able to stay in that flow state, right? To be able to be the best version of myself is what success is to me now, right? And so now I'm chasing this, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs too, right? We get into business and we're building it, we're very tactical and we're trying to figure things out, but then you get to that next point where you realize the next level isn't really in the business, it's in you.
Yeah, 100%. And I love your perspective and the evolution, and obviously, like you said, we've gotten to know each other a lot over the last years, and I've seen that evolution. The way I define success is my life right now. That's success to me.
It's amazing.
Because all of the different aspects that you talked about with freedom and financial and relationship and time, the thing is that's my life right now. I love my life right now. And I say right now because people focus so much on what you are. That's like those personality tests. It is what you are, right? When I was 2 years old, that's what I was.
Yeah.
But what I'm an expert in is where you are. And where you are can change instantly.
Yeah.
And so I say my life right now because that to me is success. It's the way I live right now.
Yeah.
And the irony, I think, in everything I heard you say is that you have all of the different things that you talked about right now. You have access to them. You just have to choose them. And that's the problem with life, is that everybody wants this, freedom of that. Freedom is a choice. It is not an external circumstance.
Yeah.
Happiness is an internal job, not an external circumstance. Freedom is an internal state, not an external circumstance. And so I have complete freedom right now because of my internal state.
Yeah.
And I can have that whether I'm in this podcast with you. I can have that whether I'm, you look at, if people are familiar with Man's Search for Meaning, like Viktor Frankl, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was happy at Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Right? So you're telling me that people today, right? Like, they're living these lives, right? I hear people talk, I want freedom of this, I want freedom of that, I want freedom of that. So you're unhappy with your life right now. Like, you're never gonna find that joy and that peacefulness. Mm-hmm. Like, that joy and that peacefulness exists right now in everybody who's listening to this podcast. They just have to choose it. Now, part of that, right, is when I work with people, I tell people, like, nothing I do fixes people. Like, I tell people, and you know this, you've heard me say this, I'm going to guide you to the work that you don't know is there. And that work is being able to build the skill and understanding to choose freedom regardless of external circumstances. It's all about internal state. And that's when I look at success. It's my life right now. Like, I fucking love everything I do every day, dude. Like, I want to get up and do whatever I want to do. And then I do it, right? Like, it's just a choice. It's just a choice. Now, the thing is where people get this twisted is that if I'm walking around and I see, let's say a trash is overflowing, right? I can make a choice. I want to change that trash. Mm-hmm. That I'm changing that trash. You know what? I'm fucking joyful as shit while I'm changing that trash
100%.
Because I get to choose if I want to do that. Yeah. Like, that's the thing is people, they eliminate choice because they think they come at it from this perspective of an unstable precognitive state where they look at it as a need. I need to change this trash. Mm-hmm. The only thing you need to do in life is breathe because it's the only thing required for you to stay alive.
That's it.
That's it. Everything else is a want.
Yeah.
And once you start approaching life, like, I get to do everything I want. Now, someone might see me changing a trash and I'm doing that and I'm going to be fucking happy. I'm going to do an amazing fucking job at it. Mm-hmm. Now, is that something that I choose to do a lot of? No, not necessarily. Right. But if I'm going to do it,
it's always done with enthusiasm.
Fucking right. Yep. Because I get to do whatever I want. And everyone else does too. They just have to choose it and understand how to choose it.
Yeah. Well, I think so much of that. I mean, first of all, I love all of that, right? And I think that's why we like to become entrepreneurs.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? And I mean, I look at my life now, and it is this, right? I do get to. If I don't want to come into the office, I don't have to come in the office. If I want to, I flew out to Chicago for a strategic coach last week. Yep. You know, and you know, having the ability to do these things it's amazing. You know, but I think so often people feel like they're either chosen to be able to be an entrepreneur and have those options, like they feel like they're chosen before they get to make that choice.
Well, and I would say, right, like, again, I'll go back to an extreme example of Viktor Frankl, right? Like, he's at Auschwitz and he's choosing happiness. Yeah. And so what happens is people, whether you're an entrepreneur or you have a job, people are like, oh, when I, if someone has a job, they're like, oh, well, if I own my business, I'll be happy. And then they're going to own a business. They're going to be miserable. Yep. Like, and then if people are entrepreneur, like, oh, if I get to this size, I'm going to be happy. No, you're still going to be miserable. Happiness is an inside job. It's not an external circumstance. Yep. And so the sooner people realize that and start working on their internal state and creating that place, all the other, and here's the irony of it, right? The irony of it, and I say this all the time, the harder you work towards something, the further you typically get from it. It's the pieces that just happen easily and effortlessly, and that's in that flow, because life's all about tension. So I said excessive tension in some area of your life. If you're working so hard, you're pushing all this tension on the area, that area is going to push tension back on you. Right? So, like, for every action, equal opposite reaction, right? And so it's like, for me, the way I used to live life was in extreme tension all the time. So, like, it's funny, for people hearing me talk, they're like, oh, I don't know, like, this guy, like, look, 10 years ago, if I would have heard some of the conversations I have on a daily basis, I'd punch myself in the face, right? Like, there's no way. Like, people don't understand, like, before I started doing this work, I came into this work 10 years ago, and, before that, dude, I'd been arrested a dozen times for assault. Like, yeah. I mean, you talk about you weren't born this way. Like, I was literally born in a knife fight. Yeah. So, like, I say that, it's not a joke. When I was born, the doctors messed up the C-section and they stabbed me in my brain when I was born. So my baby pictures are literally just stitches in my forehead because they stabbed me when I was born. So it's like I'm coming into the world, bam, knife fight. And then my system, it just was in that pattern of fighting all the time, like elementary, middle school, college, young adulthood, right? Like always, someone looked at me funny, boom. Like, because I wasn't going to wait for that threat to fulfill itself. I was going to make that person unconscious right now. And I didn't look at, and I didn't want to change. I didn't think I needed to change, right? And that's what really, 10 years ago, I went to this 4-day intensive workshop.
What got you intrigued in it?
Dude, I wasn't intrigued in it at all. Like, basically, so in 2004, so kind of like, so people understand, kind of how the journey, right? I grew up in a small town in Michigan, played college football, got done with college football. I'd had some knee surgeries. I was a strength conditioning coach at the University of Kentucky, and I found the sport of powerlifting. And turns out I have a knack for picking up heavy things. And so I did my first powerlifting meet. Actually, I was at University of Kentucky. I come up here to Zanesville, which is not too far from Columbus. And I do my first powerlifting meet, and all the guys from Westside Barbell, which, if people aren't familiar with Westside Barbell, there's a documentary on Netflix called Westside versus the World. At one point, Westside was the gym. Yeah, it was the world's strongest gym.
Yeah, it was anyone that knows anything about working out, they'd know. At least the OGs. We're getting the softer nowadays. You know what I mean? But Louis was like the godfather.
Yeah, for
100%.
Sure. And, I did my first meet, and I beat all the guys at Westside in my weight class at my first meet. And so Louis invited me to move to Columbus. So I quit my job. I left the University of Kentucky, moved up here to powerlift professionally. And the thing is, man, when I moved up here, as a strength coach, I was a GA. I was making like $8,000 a year. Yeah. So like I was really raking it in. And, I was living off of like protein shakes at the training facility, right? And so I moved up here, man. Everything that I owned at that point in my life was in a 2-door Grand Am. I had $300 cash to my name. So I came up here, first weekend I was up here, I slept in my car for that weekend. Sunday I was training at the gym, and one of the guys was like, dude, where are you staying? I was like, in the parking lot. And he's like, dude, you can sleep on my couch. And so like that dude let me sleep on his couch, and another guy was like, oh, you need money? Like come work this job with me and you can. So the first 3 months I lived in Columbus, I drove escorts around. It was cash every night. Yeah. And I needed it. You know?
Dude, I think there's a powerful lesson in that too, right? Because everybody wants to, we all, when we want to change cities or feel like we need to go somewhere else and restart, right? And that was kind of my similar story too, right? I made the jump, came here. But I think it's so crucial that if you're listening to this and that you're feeling like you need to kind of get out of where you're at and you're going to go to a new city, dude, one of the fastest ways to get connected to meet people is like find a gym.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Find a gym, find a church, whatever it is. But you've got to get in a community, because if you come somewhere like this and you don't get yourself in front of people, like people will, especially when you're a good person or a good, like people want to help people. I believe that most people do.
I do. And what I would say too is if you're thinking like, man, I got to change cities, I got to do this. What you really need to change is yourself.
Yeah.
And so you can take the same person and they go to a different town, and it's just going to be the same story written over and over again.
Yep.
And so it's interesting, like when people change towns, a lot of times they're able to change patterns easier because it's a new environment. Yep. And however, a lot of people, they keep moving and they stay the same. And that's such a crucial part, is like if someone wants to change towns, they're unhappy, that's all internal work they need to do. Yep. And sometimes changing towns does help. For me, it was literally, I wanted to be the strongest guy in the world, and Westside Barbell was the place you did that at that time, right? Yep. And so I moved up here, ended up, Dave Tate, who owns Elite FTS, he had worked at a gym. He's like, oh, I'll go personal train here. So I got connected. I got a nice job in a great place where I learned a lot about business because I was training a lot of business owners there, right? Yeah. And so it was great. I had set a world record. I benched 775 pounds. I totaled over 2,400 pounds. I had the highest total in the world. I was basically legitimately the strongest person in the world in my weight class. And then in 2004, I'm on top of the world. Like, life can't get any better, right? I'm the strongest guy at Westside Barbell. Like, life is
walking into Westside being the man.
Every day, right? Like every day, I get to play the music I want to play because I got the biggest total, right? Like, so I'm loving life, and then I'm squatting 1,100 pounds and I break my back, and And I go from I'm the strongest dude to I can't put my underwear on the next day. And man, for anybody who's like, oh, that physically, the mental side of a catastrophic injury like that is so much more than it like takes so much longer to heal than the physical.
Well, even then getting back and healing it, you see in athletes all the time, right? Yeah. I was watching something on UFC the other day about, the guys who break their leg kicking. Yeah. Right. And, they talk about how long the recovery is for the leg, but the mental is always the most taxing thing, just fearing that you're going to do it again and the same 100%. Thing's going to happen. It's like you can't, and hockey happened to me too. I broke my ankle and it was like I never was able to come back and be the same tenacious player, go into the corner, do the things that I was able to do fearlessly.
Yeah, and that's the precognitive performance I work with pro athletes is, so that mechanism that you're talking about, with what the work that I do, I actually understand the mechanism that creates that pattern and drive, and I actually understand how to shift it and teach athletes the skill. So I have an athlete like right now that because of surgery and because of how his body felt was about to quit pro sports and his last year of his contract because his body hurt so much, and it was an $8 million year, and he was just going to quit.
Oh. Had no choice.
Because his body felt so, and he came in, we started doing precognitive performance work, clearing up these old neurological patterns that were limiting his system. Because it wasn't that his system actually was hurting, it was faulty neuroception where his body, exactly what you're saying, it was going back to those times he got injured and it was protecting structures that it didn't need to protect. Yeah. But that's what's amazing about our bodies. Once you understand these mechanisms, you can leverage them and you open up capacity that you didn't know you had. And that's a big piece. Like that part of coming back from that injury, I think if I wouldn't have broken my back, I think we'd be doing this podcast and I'd be talking about my lifts and all of that, which is cool stuff. With the work I do now, I feel like it can teach people skills that can help change the world, because our world is in such a place of overwhelm and stress and anxiety, and people don't understand. And traditional cognitive-based psychology is not addressing the real root cause of the issue. It's addressing the symptoms, the perception of stress. But guess what? You know how much stress I have in my life? Fucking zero. You know how many problems I have in my life? Fucking zero. Why? Because my precognitive state is stable, so I don't have problems, man. I have fucking opportunities. That's it. And so the whole thing is like, this is the way I teach it. Stress is not an objective thing. For anybody out there who thinks like, no, I have this stress, it's not. So like what I would say is like, okay, Mike, let's say you're in a car on a Sunday drive and you're with a loved one and you're having the most deep, meaningful connection you've ever had. So much so you're making wrong turns so you won't get home, right? Then there's a car driving slow in front of you. Awesome. It helps you get to your goal. So in that state, that car driving slow is not only not a stressor, but you might even be a little thankful.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you're going on your way to close $1 billion business deal and you're 10 minutes late, and now there's a car driving slow in front of you. Little different feeling around that car?
100%. 100%.
So the car driving slow is simply a stimulus in your life, and this is for everybody. They need to understand this. In your life, there is no stress. There is stimulus. And the state that you're in when you meet that stimulus, that dictates whether or not you perceive it as a stress. And so psychology and cognitive base says, okay, take that stress and we're going to change your perception. Well, that is addressing a symptom. The work that I do, we actually step back to a cause and we actually change the state that we're in. So when that stimulus hits, we never perceive it as a stress. So it's a non-event for us.
Yeah.
So we don't have to have stress resilience,
right?
Because
it's almost the elimination of it.
It doesn't distract. And now it's not, right? That's not everywhere in life, right? It takes work. And this is a thing, because that internal tension mapping is something like every environment you're in, you need a new map. And so you learn how to do this tension mapping as you shift environments. And now you get to know where you're at. And when you have a map to every environment you're in, you can go where the fuck you want, man.
And have no stress.
That's it, man. And that's it.
And so, in all of this, I mean, obviously, let's talk about the spot a little bit, right? I mean, how did, because I mean, even with the spot, that's still a little outside of the work, right?
Well, yeah. And what happened was, so I break my back. Doctors, this is 2004. Doctors say, hey, look, man, you have to have surgery and you'll never lift heavy again. I was like, I'm not okay with that. So I started traveling the world, man. And I'm like, I got to find a better way. So I traveled the world, found a better way. I never had back surgery, worked my way back, won a world championship in 2014, deadlifted 804 pounds, no surgery. So those doctors that said you have to have surgery and never lift heavy again, not so much. So then at that point, I win the world championship. I'm like, all right, I'm going to focus on business. I'm going to be the best in the world in business. I'm going to take the spot. The Spot Athletics, we started with 2,000 square feet, all used equipment. I mean, I was just piecemealing things together, right? Like just bootstrap, right?
And just using the name, right? People knew who you were. You could get people in.
Dude, it was literally like I went to a client, and this is something for young entrepreneurs, right? Like everybody talks about it's so hard to raise capital. It's so hard to raise capital now with interest rates and this and that. But there's two kinds of capital that I see, right? There's financial capital and there's relationship capital. Mm-hmm. Now, relationship capital, that's about you building, and that's about you caring for people. And so what had happened was there was people that I had trained for a while, and I had built so much relationship capital that I went to them and I said, hey, man, I want to start my own business. And I didn't have any money to do it. And I was like, here's my business plan. And this is literally like, I had spent all this time in this business. I care, right? Like
you're ready to pitch deck.
Right? I got my whole thing. I'm like, I got to ask them for money. I hand them, and this is literally what it's like. I hand them my business plan. They take it like this, and they go, and they push it back to me. And they go, we believe in you. We'll give you whatever you need because we believe in you.
Yeah.
Now let's look at this and see if it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so they didn't care about the business plan because I'd built so much relational capital that all they wanted, they're like, whatever you need, we're going to give it to you.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing is like, I took that from, 2,000 square feet used equipment. We built that into by, 2016, we built that into two 20,000 square foot private training facilities. And what had happened was my goal, I won that world championship in 2014. My goal was to grow the Spot Athletics. It's private training facility. So we work with people from 8 to 80 years old, and it's about building better movement and teaching perfect technique and zero pain tolerance training. And we do so much there that is so contradictory.
The training is almost the smallest piece of it.
It is. Yeah. It is. Because to me, like when I look at that, we have our pyramid of physical fitness. And our pyramid of physical fitness, the base of the pyramid is breathing, then it's sleep, then it's mindset, then it's nutrition. Then we get to like the conditioning, the strength, all of those parts. If you don't have those base down of the foundation of that pyramid, dude, all the working out you're going to do, you're just going to be like a little bit better in shape piece of crap because like everything's going to hurt. Like you're mentally, you're going to be out of it. Like, and that's the thing, right? Is so for us, it was like, I want to have so many of these locations. And then I went to a 4-day course with this guy in South Africa. And it was I've had 14 surgeries through powerlifting. Like, I mean, dude, the way I used to live my life, man, you got to understand, like I tore this bicep off. How'd I do that? I was competing at the Arnold Classic to see who has the world's strongest grip strength. So it was this event on the main stage. There was big money for it. Like there was people from all over the world. And the week of the competition, somebody was blocking my car in. And so how do you move? If a car's blocking you in a little bit, you pick it up and move it. So I get my hand on the car, I start lifting up. As soon as the tires break the ground, boom, my bicep blows off. And so I was so pissed off. I call my doc, right? And I'm like, Doc, I just tore my bicep off. Can I still compete on Saturday? And my doc, which is why he's my doc, he was like, well, are you sure it's torn? I mean, my thing, it was rolled way up here. Yep. I was like, oh, it's torn. He was like, well, yeah, you can compete. You can't tear it anymore. And so I did. So I put a little tape on. I competed. I didn't win because, newsflash, your bicep's important in grip strength.
Right, I was going to say, how important is the bicep?
It's pretty important. Now, I didn't come in last in the competition, so I'm pretty proud of that. But I still competed. It did not feel good. The very next week, I had my bicep reattached, right? That's how I live life, was that when that car was blocking me, the only choice I had was to pick it up and move it. I mean, there's a million other choices, right? But when that precognitive state is in an unstable place like mine was, I was constantly in survival mode. Yeah. So I didn't see options, right? If someone looked at me funny, there was one option: punch them in the face. Like that was it. Like, and you're talking like wouldn't matter if I was like, and people like, oh, like out at a bar. Like, no, I'm talking like Saturday afternoon out, like,
or a stoplight.
Yeah, I told you that story. Yeah, like I was at a stoplight turning left, and someone decided they wanted to honk too much. So at the time, like when I competed professionally in powerlifting, I was usually between 300 to 310, and that day it found me dove into a sunroof of a car slapping someone around at a stoplight because they were honking and yelling obscenities at me.
I bet they never honked again, though.
I probably did. I mean, I don't know if never, but I would say they definitely thought twice about what would happen if you honk at someone. But like for me at that time, that was my only, like when that dude was yelling, it wasn't like, oh, let it go. No, it was like, all right, time to go to work. Like, and the way I thought was like the universe I was instant karma for people who were assholes. But in reality, I was living in such a survival state that so much tension, if anybody pushed any tension back, there was an explosion, right? And so that for me, like even in my business, right? Like, man, so what happened? I go to this, I'm working like, dude. So like, all right. So when my daughter was born, right? So I got my business and it's just me, dude. We got 2,000 square feet and I'm doing everything. So my daughter's born 3 a.m. At 8 a.m. I went and taught a fucking class. So I left my wife, my newborn daughter, to go, because that was the only thing. Like I had to go do it. Like I'm building this business. I got to go do it. Right. Like that's where I was, where like leaving my newborn was the only choice I had. That's how I live life, dude. I worked so hard. And I wasn't rich. I wasn't happy. I was miserable, dude. Like leaving your newborn daughter, dude, to go work, like to go teach some random fitness class, dude, bro, like, that ain't a great place to be in life, man. And that's why I say when people are talking about, like, when I'm like, you can choose freedom, like, dude, if I can be in a place where I got to go teach a fitness class and leave my newborn daughter and my wife to where I am now, when I say it's a fucking choice, it's a fucking choice. Mm-hmm. It ain't like I came out of the womb and I was like some like whatever, relax, this and that. Like I came out screaming and fighting in a knife fight. And it didn't stop, man. I kept fighting all the time. And then I go to South Africa, dude, and I spend 4 days with this cat from South Africa, man. I'm at the airport. I call my wife at the time. This is like 10 years ago, right? And I call my wife at the time, and I literally go, hey, babe, what's up? Her automatic response back to me was, what's wrong with you? Dude, I was the most calm, relaxed. It was the best I'd ever felt in my life. And looking back on it now, I understand. Like the whole time she knew me, I was just like survival, aggressive, survival, tension, right? Fight. Mm-hmm. And I was calm and relaxed and peaceful. And she didn't know what peaceful JL, like right. To her, something was wrong. Like something's Jackie, like, what are you?
Well, her patterns have built around yours.
Yeah. And she, you know, right. She loved to fight, right? Cause that's it. Like the reason we were together, she fight, I fight, and we all fight. Everything's great. And you know, that's the thing. Like I didn't get into the work because I wanted to change mentally or any of my behaviors or any of that. Like I got into it because I was like, oh, I heard this could make my body feel better. And then like at first I only did understand the body part because there's like some things you can do and it's like, oh, you rub and it makes this change. And it's a cool thing. The thing is it's scratching the surface of the power of the work. But as people kind of have gotten from some of this, like it's some high level stuff. Yeah. And so high level to the point where it doesn't even exist in like behavior theory. Like I've worked with a bunch of psychologists and behaviorists and done a bunch of research. Like this is like a new field of study. Yeah. I mean, it is high level work. And the cool part is I can teach it to anybody. Yeah. They don't have to have the high level of understanding of how it all works.
They have to be willing.
You know this. Do what I say and the it works. It's like magic, right? Yep. And so magic is just science you don't understand. And so you don't have to understand it for it to work. And so, but that, you know, so what happened was 6 months after I did that course, man, I'd never read a book cover to cover in my entire life. And I was sitting there and I closed this book and I was like, what the hell just happened? Like I could, and so I was like, okay, there's more to this. And then I just started researching the mental side of it and the changes, and that's what got me down to the precognitive state. And it's crazy. The research I did actually was going back to like the late 1800s, early 1900s, because that's when we switched from really being farmers into like the Industrial Revolution. And then a lot of people were having nervous breakdowns. And so that's what's crazy. We call it a nervous breakdown because our nervous system literally breaks down. And so, but we're not addressing our nervous system. And that's kind of the state we see today with like the overwhelm and the anxiety that everybody has.
Well, and they don't teach you that you have the power to unlock these things.
No, well, because they don't know how to teach you, right? And that's the thing. It's not because they don't teach you because it's some nefarious, like whatever. They just don't know. Like people are doing the best they can with the information they have. Like, look, at that stoplight, when I came and jumped in that dude's sunroof and was slapping him, I was doing the best I could with where I was at. And so I don't look back at that time and I don't recognize that person because it's just not where I'm at now. However, like, I mean, that's all of those things. I still was doing the best I could with where I was at. And I think, that's the thing for me is like I started growing the spot and I realized that this precognitive optimization work I do can help change the world in a way that what I do in fitness just can't. And so then I shut down that goal of growing the spot athletics. And then it was like, I need to dive into really this precognitive optimization, understand it, be able to explain it, be able to teach it to people. And, it's been a long journey. I started writing a book on it 7 years ago. And as I started writing the book on it, I was working with a lot of teams. And so like I was doing research and I was studying some of the best coaches in the entire world, right? And so one of the teams I worked with was Ohio State. So it was Urban Meyer's last year. Like I'm in meeting rooms, I'm on sidelines during game, and I worked with a bunch of other coaches. And really what happened was I shut down that book idea because the world wasn't ready for the concepts that I was studying and that I was researching. And, for all the things in COVID actually, one of the beautiful pieces that came out of COVID was it made people ultra aware that your mental and physical states are intricately connected. You cannot separate them, right? And so now it's like we've gone through this change. I've been working with businesses, athletes, all sorts of people. And now, I haven't really put out any social content or any information on any of this work, primarily because I've been in the work, researching, building, growing, and it's now I'm finally at a point where it's like, okay, I'm ready to bring this work to the world because I feel like the world's ready and needs this work at this time.
Kind of a side quest on this, right, is that, I think a huge thing, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs, is that when, they're building the business, they've got this dream, and then sometimes you might have to adapt in the middle of that, right? And we hold on to that ego that's like, right? I think that's a powerful thing that you've done because it wasn't like you've just shut the spot down.
No.
Right? You've allowed the spot has, brought you the ability to have the financial, success to really focus on this. And I think that's a huge piece to it too, that, as a founder, that doesn't mean you always have to stay in the thing, right? Like I think we think we're going to get this passion and I get stuck in that sometimes, right? Where
For sure.
It's like, oh man, I'm in it. I got this ego towards it. I got to grow it. I got to do this thing. I said I was going to do it. And sometimes it's about, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, it's like you have a dream or a vision and you want to create something. Sometimes all your role is to create something that's going to provide opportunity for other people. And then now that's your opportunity to really lean in to discover who you are.
Well, and I would say this, dude. I used to be such a micromanager, dude, because how did I build a spot? Dude, it was everything, man. Like, it was me. It was, my guy, Matt Bernauskas, he came on with me right from the rip, right? And it was me and Matt just like grinding every single day, right? And we did everything, painting, putting equipment, right? Like every single thing, right? And it wasn't like for me, as we grew and we started to expand, I still was micromanaging everything. I was still involved, right? I was still working 16 hours a day, right? Because I was like, I have to be involved in it. I need to be involved in every decision, right? And so the amazing part of this for me is like in this precognitive optimization work and when I work with entrepreneurs, it becomes freedom. Because what happens is people don't understand, right? Like riding a bike or a slap shot in hockey, right? Like hockey guys are always great golfers. Why? Because the motor program for a hockey swing and a golf swing are very similar. And so motor programs, like anybody, right, riding a bike, it doesn't matter how long people haven't ridden a bike, you hop on a bike. Why? Because that motor program gets ingrained and it's automatic. Well, what people don't understand is that behavior patterns get ingrained neurologically and they become automatic. So that controlling, which I'm not a big fan of trauma as a word. I like survive and thrive patterns, like survive and thrive, because everything we do is driven by our physiological need to survive. And so that's why I said, like, doing the best with where we're at, like wherever my physiology is, like how stable, unstable, whatever, like everybody's just, like you said, they're good people. They're doing the best they can with where they're at. And so for me, it was like, God, I couldn't, it didn't matter how hard I couldn't get out of everything in the spot because I didn't choose it, right? Yeah. And so I thought I needed to be involved. And what I realized through this work with precognitive optimization is I had to do my work to change that neurological pattern. And that's where using the internal tension mapping, now all of a sudden when I could synchronize, right, mentally I was like, I don't want to be involved in every single decision. I don't want to, but then next thing you know, I'm over here like, yeah. And so then to synchronize that mental, that physical, and that neurological, that brought alignment and integrity to my system where now all of a sudden I'm thinking I don't want to be involved in everything, and then I'm actually not. Yeah. And it's not even hard not to be involved in it. It's actually just where you're at. Because once you build that neurological pattern, it becomes automatic. And so what I say with the precognitive work, it's not about a way of thinking, it's about creating a new way of being. And so that's such a big difference, because thinking, I can leverage 60 bits of information a second. Being, I can leverage 11 million bits of information a second. And so now, like, this is the thing. It's like, you know, I ask people, like, you brush your teeth every day, right? Yeah. Oh, you're so fucking disciplined. Oh my God, how do you do that? You must be so motivated. Like, no, it's just,
it's the pattern.
It's just it. Like, it's automatic. Yeah. And so you can build those automatic, and part of it is understanding, and this is part of it, is disrupting those old patterns. That's part of the internal tension mapping, is finding what's destabilizing that system and being able to free that out of your system so you can create and ingrain these new patterns. And so for me now, like, it's great. Like, I actually just had a staff person who had worked for me many years ago, and they're back, and they're back in a management role. And he's like, you know, I know how you are. Like, if I, you know, I don't want to have you like change everything I do and this and that and this and that. And I started laughing because I'm like, definitely, dude, that's exactly how I was. You're spot on. And I was like, you haven't been around me, so you wouldn't know that I'm different. Yeah. And I was like, but ask our coaching operations person who's been here 6 months. And so he's like, hey, does JL change what you do? And she's just like, no, not once in 6 months. Like, he'll say like, hey, have you thought about this or this?
Yeah, give him a framework or a guideline.
Right, 100%. But she's like, she's never come back and been like, you should have done it like this, or why'd you do it like that?
Well, and you know, and you kind of talked about with the, you know, when your daughter was born, right? And this like necessity to have to go, right? And I think that when you're talking about all the inputs and the stuff that we're getting from today's society, right? Like, there's almost this like badge of honor about like hustle. Like, you can't, like, people make you think that you can't build a business unless you're like doing it miserably, and you're sacrificing all your relationships and sacrificing your health and sacrificing all these things, because if not, it's not going to be earned.
Here's the thing, man. No one gives a shit how you got to the final score. They just want to know the fucking score.
Yeah.
And so to me, man, like, I know some people who have got so many zeros in their bank accounts and they are miserable every single day. And I know people that barely have anything and love their life. And so to me, I think there's nobody out there who would be like, if you could choose having a huge bank account and being miserable, or having a small bank account and loving your life, people are going to pick loving your life.
100%.
And so the thing is like, that money, so there's this cool study, man, where they actually follow lottery winners and people who get in accidents and become paralyzed. And so they track their happiness over 3 years. So, of course, what would you expect at first, right? Lottery winners, right? We come up. Yep. After 3 years, the people that are paralyzed are significantly and statistically more happy than the lottery winners after 3 years.
And how much? I mean, and I'm assuming a lot of that is the patterns of the person that gets, has the disability. They have no choice but to learn to,
because they become grateful for so many things they used to take for granted.
Yeah.
Right? Where the lottery winner starts to just build this sense of entitlement to all of these things. Where the person who gets paralyzed, man, you see someone walking, like, I'm really grateful for that. Like little things you become grateful for in your life. And so now all of a sudden, like over time, so it's like, I look at that study and I'm like, man, like it's not money. Like it is a choice. And when I look at this, however, I'll say this, it's hard work to shift the patterns, and it takes time. And that's like when I work with people, I say, like, if you're not, I don't do the work, I don't fix you. I guide you to the work that you need to do. If you don't want to do work, then let's not fucking
show you that it's there.
Yeah. And so, what I think is so key for people is that, it's a perspective and a philosophy. When I look at everything in my life, I've created everything in my life. I've been in lawsuits. I've had people steal money. I've done all this, right? And I created all those situations. Mm-hmm. My perspective is that my choices lead to all of my outcomes. Nobody has ever stolen money from me. I made choices to put myself in a position where people could steal money.
Yep.
That's a huge difference.
Very big.
People are out there and they're like, oh, this person stresses me out. Well, here's a newsflash. Or this person pisses me off. No one can piss you off. You can choose to let someone's actions or words piss you off. But no one has the power to piss you off. You have to give them that power. And that's what we're living in a world of people who are just giving up their power. It's like, okay, this is all the power I own. And I go, okay, Mike, you can piss me off. Now you own me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know about you guys. I'm super competitive. I don't want to be like, hey, Mike, you own me. Here's all my power.
Yeah.
I don't want to live like that.
No.
That is not a place I want to live in. I want to be like, okay, Mike, I have all my power. I can choose to be pissed off by what you're saying. Or I can choose not to, right? Or I can make a million other choices.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep this power so that I'm in control of every outcome in my life.
Yeah.
But there's another caveat in that. I'm not invested in outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only invested in my intentions, because my intentions are ultimately all I can control. And so when I'm only invested in the things I can control, that's why success is my life right now, because I'm invested in everything I can control. I'm not invested in Mike pissed me off. I'm not invested in the outcomes. Those are the things that lead to unhappiness, because we invest in things that we can't control. And that's how I lived my entire life. That person honking, they fucking pissed me off, right? Mm-hmm. Like my daughter getting born, there was people there and I needed money, right? And this and that, right? Like all those stories we create, and we create those stories based on our internal state. And the thing is we can actually, once we understand, we can learn to control within internal tension mapping our internal state. Yeah. And we have control over our internal state. We have control over everything.
That's powerful. Powerful, man. No, I love that, dude. And it's true, man. I think that, and that's one of my, like for me, I think that's the thing that I love the most about entrepreneurship is that, it does force you to be uncomfortable. Like you can't grow people in a business until you grow yourself.
Well, that's the thing, right? The thing that got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
And people say it all the time. I say it a little differently. The canoe that gets you across the river slows you down when you carry it up the mountain. And so for me, these patterns that people run as entrepreneurs, and I did it. So I lived it. Like this isn't like
no, you're not just a scientist.
I'm not like, oh, well, if it, no, like I worked so hard. I was killing myself, making barely any money, right? Just killing myself. Like leaving my daughter when she like miss all these things with my family and my kids, and like just let my health go to shit, right? Like I let everything go because I was like, oh, I gotta grind and build a business and do this. And now, right, like all of a sudden, as I started to do this precognitive optimization work and I started to learn how to shift my patterns, it's like, wait, I don't need to do any of that. Now, I may want to do some of that.
Choose to do it.
I may choose to do some of that. And so everything started changing. It's like now I'm in a place where it's crazy because it's like I'm a billion times happier than I was then. I make better money. I would tell you that I don't work, right? People are like, how much do you work? And I'm like, I don't.
Like, this is work.
Like that,
right?
Right? Like this, this is work. So that's why I tell them, like, I don't work. Like, I just get to do amazing shit every day. Like, because for me, it's creating, it's teaching, and it's speaking. Like, for me, if I'm in those places, those are the places I choose to be, because those are the places that for me are my unique ability. Those are the places where I can bring the most value to the world. And for me, I believe that if I want to really feel like success is my life right now, then I want to be in those high value places as much as I can.
How do you think somebody can like determine those things?
And I think this is an interesting point. The work that I do, it's all about stability and orientation. And so I think what happens is a lot of people are working to figure out answers from an unstable place. And so that's like, if you were on like a tilt-a-whirl kind of thing, you're spinning. I was like, all right, pick out the yellow flag. You're like, it's there. Like, that's how a lot of people are living. So like, to me, one of the things I love to talk about is you have to slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
And so like for people, they have to create space. And for some people, that's sitting on a beach. For some people, that's in the woods. For some people, it's just a quiet room. So for some people, it's working out, right? But it's create that space for yourself where you can really settle and really be reflective on like, what do I want? And a lot of times people answer that without creating that space. So they're on that tilt-a-whirl, right? And they're on that tilt-a-whirl, like, I want $1 billion company, and I want this, and I want this. And it's like, yeah, when you're on the tilt-a-whirl, that all seems cool, but like, get off the tilt-a-whirl and sit down and create space where you can really reflect on what it is you really want.
And not give an answer that you think you should give.
It is, man. There's so many pressures from social media, from just the society we live in, of like, ultimately for me, when I talk to people about how they define success, pretty much everybody goes, well, people who are very just starting in their journey, a lot of times will go to like money and those things, but everybody, once they get to a certain point, realizes it's not the thing. And so usually the people that I'm working with are a little higher level. It's freedom. Yeah. It's freedom of time, right? Like all these freedoms. And I think that the interesting part is that everybody, regardless of where they are at, can have that freedom. It's just a matter of stability and orientation. How are you seeing the world, and where are you at in the world? And for me, I think that I'm constantly evaluating that place for me. And I'm constantly mapping where I'm at on that, because that changes every environment I go into, right? And I think the beautiful part in this work is that, people talk about like safety, right? Like safety. But ultimately, that space creates a settling in the system where you feel safe to actually think about the shit you actually care about. Not the things that other people tell you to care about, not the things that you're supposed to want or you should want, right? But it's like, what do I really value? And I would say for most people, I would say a place to start is, number one, create that space. But before you actually go into what's the life I want, start with just simply, what are my personal values? Because I can define the life I want. If I don't define how I want my behaviors to be on my way there, I could be real unhappy in that journey.
That's good.
And so for me, what I want my life to be like is an outcome. My values, those deeply held beliefs that dictate my actions, that's my guidebook on the journey. And when I have high intentions around living my values, that means every day I'm living in high intention and alignment with my values. I can be real happy. The outcome, I spend some time, I want to be intentional in the outcome. But after I figure out that outcome, like, I let that go.
Yeah.
And then I focus in. So if you don't have those values, then it's like you don't even know the deep, what are your deeply held beliefs that are going to guide your actions as you take that journey. Because for me, I will tell you, my journey has changed so much. Like, my journey was, I wanted to be a professional football player, knee surgeries, boom, that changed. Man, I was upset about that. Then I was like, okay, I want to be a college pro strength conditioning coach. I'm at Kentucky, everything's great, right? Boom, now I want to be the strongest guy in the world. Boom, 1,100 pounds, break my back. Now it's like, I want to get back. I did, awesome. Well, I'm going to tell you, when my outcome was being the strongest guy in the world and I couldn't put on my underwear, I mean, dude, it got dark. Like, it was like, I wouldn't shower for a week, right? Like, I wouldn't leave the house. I mean, it was dark, dude. Like, it was not a good place for me because the outcome was my focus, right? And I couldn't be the strongest guy in the world. I could barely, it hurt to move. So I was so depressed. And so because I was outcome focused. Shoot, dude, if I'd have had this perspective back then, I wasted almost 5 years of my life just being depressed because I wasn't the strongest guy because I was outcome focused. Yeah. If I would have been intention focused and had the values that I have now, every day I could have been doing something to move the needle. Every day I could have, because I can focus on that, right? I can focus on the intention of the day.
Yeah. And values are honestly more simple than the outcome, right?
It's so many complexities to the outcome. That's why it's pointless to focus on. There's so many things we can't, right? Like, if there's a recession, right, that's going to change, right? Like, all of these outside factors. But we can control our intentions. We can control how living according to our values. And that's the focus. That's why I say, like, for me, success is my life right now because these are my focal points. Yeah. And so, like, it sometimes gets very challenging to keep those as focal points because the way I like to talk about it is like, we're all climbing this mountain and it's really like whatever mountain you want it to be, success mountain, life mountain, whatever it is, self-awareness mountain, you can call it what you want. The crazy part is we don't know how high it is. We don't know where it ends. It's just this journey we're all on. And it's like the higher I climb on this, the better perspective I get on everything else. It's like flying. Like, if I look at a skyscraper, it's huge. I can't even comprehend from the ground. I'm in a plane. It's this tiny little dot, right? Like, so it's like there is no truth. It's all just perspective. And perspective is just another way of saying orientation. Yep. And that orientation to the world changes the way you see everything. Yeah. And then when you have stability, if you're always in the plane, I got stability, and now I got this orientation, like, you get to see a lot of things people never see. Yeah. And so that's, for me, I think when we're going into thinking about how we approach life, if we just focus on those intentions and set those values, but create the space to do so. Yeah. Don't just randomly pick a couple words out of a book, right? Like, I'll tell you this. So this is kind of messed up, but this is what I did when I did my personal values. I went, if someone was threatening to kill my daughter, would I violate this value? Right? Like, that's deeply held belief, right? Yeah. Like, would I violate it, right? And so, honesty, right? I was like, nope, not a value. I would lie my ass off to save my daughter's life. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So it was like, that was the lens that I looked at through it. Yeah. And the ones that I got to, I would not violate if someone would, because there's no way they could make me violate them. Yeah. Right? Good. There's no way they could make me violate them. And so, one of them was like uncommon caring. well, you can't make me not care about my daughter, right? Like it expands. Always searching. For me, I'm always searching. Like one thing I'll tell you, Mike, is I'm a 3-year-old. I'll ask why 1,000 times. Like I think some people talk about a white belt mentality. I don't love thinking about a white belt mentality because to me, a white belt doesn't have a lot of skills and knowledge, right? A white belt doesn't have a lot of skills and knowledge. I approach life with a 3-year-old mentality. A 3-year-old dude, I don't know how many 3-year-olds you've been around, but dude, they will ask questions and they'll be like, well, why that? Why that? Why?
They're like knowing NLP before they
even. Right. Like, dude, it's crazy. Like you get to a point with a 3-year-old, you're like, shit, I don't know. I'm going to have to do some research and get back to you, Timmy. Like, you know, like and that to me, like, I want to be a 3-year-old because how does a 3-year-old approach life? Love and curiosity, man.
Yeah.
And I know if I just approach every day with love and curiosity, amazing things happen in the world. That's why I love a 3-year-old mentality more than a white belt mentality, because I know some white belts that are fucking assholes.
Right. And then you're still again, a white belt, right? It's a very physicality side than it is the mental side.
Yeah. And a 3-year-old mentality, dude, every day a 3-year-old comes up, they love everything about their life and they're just curious to learn more. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of that, right, I saw something the other day that said, we're in this simulation or matrix, right, kind of concept. And, he's talking about a 3-year-old. And he said, when a 3-year-old, they're kids. And he said, so for many of us, our lives are, we don't realize all of these restrictions and all these stories and all these things, these patterns that we start to develop over time. They say, a 3-year-old, they're loving, they're curious. And he said, you see a kid, he jumps up on a table, right? And everybody in that room's like, get that kid off that table, right? And so someone yells at that child. Right. And now that child thinks that all they were trying to do was have fun and enjoy themselves. Yep. And now all of a sudden their lens immediately shifts. Yep. And then now they think jumping on a table is bad, or maybe having fun is bad, or enjoying is bad. Right. And then it's like, then another person tells you this. And like, so you just start to build up all of these patterns and all of these beliefs and all of these things that, I always say, like, even our belief system, I've always kind of called it a taught system.
Yep.
Because majority of us don't actually know what our beliefs are, because we've just been running the playbook that we've kind of been given along that process.
The way I look at it in my work is there's what you are, that's hardwired. So there's like, it doesn't matter if I took a disc profile when I was 12 today, 10 years from now, I'm going to be 100D. Yeah. That is what I am. That part is hardwired. I mean, there's stories that your parents can tell me about you, and I'd go, yep, that's Mike. Yeah. Right? Like when you were 2, they tell me a story from when you were 2. I'd be like, yeah, that's Mike. Yep. And people listen to the podcast could hear a story and be like, yeah, that's Mike. Right? Like, right. What you are is hardwired. That's where a lot of psychology does spend its time, where like behavior mechanisms and behaviorists get into is who you are. And who you are is knowledge, skills, experience. It takes a lot of time. That's the taught part that you're thinking of. Because there's a certain part of what you are that doesn't change. It doesn't matter. That's like nature, nurture kind of deal. Yeah. And so when people talk about nature and nurture, they're actually missing a piece. And the piece that they're missing is the piece that I'm an expert in. Nature is what you are. Nurture is who you are. However, you know what no one's talking about? Where you are.
That's good. I'm going to write that one down.
And where you are is that is your capacity in any given moment to express what and who you are fully. And so you could take the greatest CEO in the world. I don't care, whatever. I'll just call Steve Jobs, right? I don't know if he's the greatest CEO, but pretty amazing. Elon Musk, right? Amazing businessman. If I take Elon Musk and I throw him in the middle of the ocean with a bunch of sharks around him and let him sit there for about 5 hours and then come back when he can barely hang on, do you think he's going to answer any of my business questions real well? Right? He's going to be focused on surviving and not dying. Yeah. And so where he is, that capacity dictates his ability to express the what and who he is. Yeah. And so literally when you think about someone like Elon Musk, could be where they are, could be in a place where they are the worst business person in the world. Yeah. But the cool part about where you are is it can change instantly, right? We can put them on the boat. And so what's happening in our world is we have all these employees and entrepreneurs that are looking at themselves going, what and who I am, I should be so successful to do that, but they're not assessing where they're at. And that's where people get unhappy, is because where they're at, they're not able to execute the what and who.
When they're not in alignment with themselves.
They're not in alignment. And so there's this big gap that creates a lot of unhappiness when you're like, God, because I was there, dude. I was there. I was like, I'm ridiculously smart. I know all these business things. I've used all these consultants. I've done this, and I'm working my butt off, and I'm barely making enough money, right?
Yeah.
It was because my what and my who were good. And the way I look at it, like normal, like the cognitive based world we live in, psychology, what they do is basically you have your capacity is here, and then they work to grow your knowledge and skills and experience to meet your capacity. And when that happens, when you get knowledge and skills and it fills out the capacity you already have, it's transformational. That information becomes transformational because the capacity is there to execute it. However, what I see in today's world, and it's more prevalent than ever because information's so readily available too, right, is all of a sudden people have this knowledge and skill that's this big.
But this capacity.
But the capacity's here.
Yeah.
And the problem is that, I mean, I'm the only person with precognitive optimization that I'm aware of that is actively teaching people the skill of growing the capacity to meet the knowledge and skills they already have to create alignment and then that joyfulness and happiness in their life. And so that's the thing. Like people get it screwed up all the time. See, I saw it in fitness for years. People would work to lose weight, and it's like people would come in, and it's like, oh, give me a written out diet plan. It's like, well, look, a written out diet plan is good for one thing long term, making you feel bad about yourself. Like, what's healthier, pizza or broccoli? Oh, broccoli, cool. You have the information. The information for like weight loss, same. Like people have the information. The capacity to execute's here, and actually using pre-out, you can actually leverage that and grow that capacity for any area.
When they say, what is it that, if information was key, we'd all be rich with 6 packs.
That's it, man. That's it. I say, you've heard me say that, man. Like, because it's all the information is there. But in our world, what people are really lacking isn't the information; it's the capacity to execute it. And the way you grow capacity is by bringing stability and orientation to your precognitive state. That's what limits capacity. That's what limits outcomes. And for me, when I talk to people, I'm always like, look, I'm going to reveal possibilities you didn't even know existed. And that's going to unlock capacity you didn't know you had. And the things I'm doing now, like running multiple business, going into multi-billion-dollar companies and working with their C-suites on how you leverage these precognitive leadership mechanisms, right? The life I live, dude, like, so I had my knee replaced back in January, right? So coming up on a year here, 10 months ago. And as I was laying there, I was like, I work great with a goal, right? I'm 100D, my drive, right? So like, I was like, cool. So I set a goal. Every goal I'd done has been about power, strength, right? Like powerlifting, football, 1 set of 1, right? Like, so I set a goal of climbing this mountain, Mount Aconcagua. It's in Argentina. It's just shy. It's 22,900 feet high. And so I did this because it's going to stretch my capacity in a way that I've never stretched my capacity.
You're comfortable lifting and being strong.
Exactly, right? That's a pattern that's well ingrained.
Yeah.
But climbing up to 23,000 feet is not something I've ever stretched my capacity to do.
Yeah.
And so I've started training for this. I'm actually going this weekend to Sedona for 3 days, to hike for 3 days. The life that I live in, and the things, and I will say, I set that goal. So I'm training. I'm very intentional because I've got a little over a year to when I'm scheduled to climb. And so, because you're not only are you climbing to about 23,000 feet, but you carry a 70-pound pack. So there's a lot of training, and I have to adjust a lot.
Yeah.
Here's what I will tell you. I'm 100% invested in my intentions around all of my training and everything I'm doing. Do I want to get to the top of the mountain? Fucking right I do. If something happens and I'm not at the top of that mountain come January of 2026, am I going to be depressed, sad? No. Because where I'm focused is my intentions every day leading up to that climb.
Yeah.
I can't control things at that climb, like weather, whatever. I can't control outcomes, but I can control intentions. And so this is the piece to me, is that I know, because I control the intentions. Now I've been doing this precognitive optimization work for a long time now. And so I'm looking like, how do I stretch my capacity in ways that I haven't even thought about or dreamed about? And so, there's so many, like the thing I love the most, and I hear people talk, and these would be my two things for people as far as creating space in their lives. Number one, life comes from you, not at you. Every situation in your life is of your making, regardless of if you can see the reasons or not. And the sooner people accept that, the better place they're going to be in. Number two, the only thing you need to do in life is breathe. And the thing is do everything you're doing every day and want to do it, right? So I look at like part of being an owner in CRC, right? Like, so as an owner, like you got to look at a P&L, right? So you can say, I need to look at a P&L, which that eliminates choice, or I want to look at the P&L. Or you could hire a fractional CFO and not even really look at the P&L. Or you could just ignore the P&L altogether and just hope it works out, right? Like there's a lot of choices, right? But there's a lot of choices that you can make. The place that becomes stressful is when you need to look at that P&L. And in every part of everyday's life, right? Like, I need to spend time with my kids. No, I want to spend time with my kids, right? So like for me, the two places people could leverage the most in their life is understanding that life comes from you, not at you. You are the creator of every situation you're in. And number two, the only thing you need to do is breathe.
That's
Everything
good.
else is a want.
That's good.
And so again, I could want to change the trash, but then there's people that are like, I need to change trash, and they do it begrudgingly.
Yeah. It's
like the reason why I can sit here and in full integrity in my system say that success is my life right now is I can tell you everything I do every day is everything I want to do.
Yeah. That's good.
That's it.
That's it.
And that's a choice.
Yeah. And it's something I think people, it's simple. It's not easy.
Simple, not easy. That's
right.
I say that all the time. Squatting 1,000 pounds, very simple. You put weight on the bar, you go down, you come up. It's very simple. It ain't easy.
Right.
And the same with this work. Like I'll tell people, and I've said this, it is hard work. Changing neurologically ingrained behavioral patterns in your system, it takes work. And that means like you're tension mapping all the time. You're working on that all the time. And eventually, right, it's like grooves. Like I look at it like grooves in a record. The longer that needle's been there, the deeper the groove is, right? So then as you start to pick the needle up and take it out of the groove and put it in a different pattern, that's part of what that tension mapping does. The thing is when you go back into your world and your life, that stimulus is working to push that needle back into the groove. So you have to constantly be doing work to keep the needle out of the old groove.
Well, I think one of the,
until the new groove is deep, and then you don't have to work it anymore.
And, I think a big part too is, you can go and do all this work, but then when you no different than addicts. Right. And you take an addict and you get them out of, where they're at, get them out of that environment. You put them in a safe house and they get clean and they feel better and they're, they feel like they can accomplish it now and they're feeling powerful. Yep. Right. And then you throw them back to that environment. And there's two sides to it. One, your environment's a lot of times is going to control the way that you respond, react, unless you consistently do this work and you're able to keep 100%. Yourself in that position. The other side of it, too, is that when you do get exposed to these things or exposed to this capacity, that also makes it hard for some of those relationships and things that you've had because you start to see the world through this different lens, right? That was something that I struggled with, right? As I've grown and I think you and I even had a conversation around my father at one point, right? Yeah. And I was like, man, I would be excited to want to share. And then next thing you know, we're in an argument and things weren't, and you and I kind of talked about that. And you're like, man, because you're trying to force your pattern, you're trying to force your change onto him. And that doesn't make it good or bad. It just makes it what it is. And you have to understand that you need to be able to observe your relationships. And you sometimes it's loving people from afar. Sometimes it's being able to just support them and be there in that moment and just love them for who they are. And they don't have to change. They don't have to be, hip to the things that you're doing and want all of those too.
Well, and I would say this, love them So love them no matter where they are.
Yeah.
So I look at it like, when we bring stability to our system, then we're sitting there, and it's like, basically, to go back to Elon Musk, right? So if he's drowning and he's got sharks all around him, and I'm sitting on a boat and I'm super stable on this big yacht, and I'm yelling at him, just climb on the boat, but he doesn't know he's drowning, doesn't know how to move.
Yeah.
How happy is he going to be about me telling him to climb on the fucking boat, right? Like, he's going to be pissed at me. And that's the thing is, like, when we know what, like, I can tell you this, like, what I am and who I am, like I love to help people. To me, like, it's just part of, like, I love serving people. I love to help people. I love to see people grow and get and move to a better place. I think I'm also a comedian. Like, I think so many things are funny, right? Yeah. So, like, to me, like, I think at my what I am, right, it's this love and this curiosity and this humor, right? And that has never changed. That's what I am. And so, my mom used to say, like, man, when people are your friends, they're like, it's really great to be JL's friends. And boy, if you're not his friend, like, you're in trouble. Right. And that's the thing is, like, I had so many relationships. I mean, I ruined every relationship that I had with a female. I mean, I ruined it. And it was because of where I was. And the interesting part was, like, I never wanted to hurt those people. I never set out to, I never was like, I'm going to do this bad thing to this or cheat on this person or do that. But so what I was, and this is my understanding, is those people I dated could see what I was, right? And so they loved what I was, but they couldn't be with where I was. And so that caused a lot of relationships where, like, I would do bad things, and people I dated, their friends would be like, why are you with him? And now what I understand is, like, they could see what I was. Yeah. And they loved that. But then the where I was not in alignment with what I was. And that's where a lot of unhappiness in life is. And so when we talk about dealing with people, if we know what and who they are, and then we're just looking at a matter of where they are, that can change instantly. It allows me to give people grace. Yeah. Empathy. Right? Not empathy. Sympathy, not empathy. There's a very big reason. Sympathy and empathy are not the same thing. So that's another thing in our fucking society. They tell you to give empathy. Dude, fucking empathy is bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to be so discerning with who you give empathy to, because empathy is feeling what someone else feels. Sympathy is understanding what someone else feels. And the difference is, if you're in a 50-foot hole, empathy is me climbing down in the hole with you and being like, yeah, this really sucks to be in this hole. Sympathy is me standing at the top of the hole going, man, Mike, that looks like it sucks. Well, the difference between sympathy and empathy is I can throw you a fucking ladder when I have sympathy. Yeah. When I understand where you're at, I can help you out of there. Empathy is me crawling down next to you and crying. I'm not helping you out of there in that hole. We're just going to cry in the hole together. And so that's why I say you have to be so discerning with who you give empathy to. Those have to be the closest relationships in your life, because that takes a lot of capacity. Yeah. Because you're there helpless with that person. And sometimes in like, if my daughter, right, like, she's a teenager, there's times I'm happy to lay down next to her and just be sad at whatever. And I'm not doing shit about it. You know why? Because laying there and being with her is the best way I can show up for her in that moment. But I'm not going to do that with very many people. Right. But I want to have sympathy. I want to understand where you are so I can help you move out of the hole. That's good. And so that's the thing is, like, when you understand where people are, and that's a lot of what I teach in my work, is, like I say, like, I'm not an expert in what or who people are. I'm an expert in where people are. And I'm an expert in shifting where you are. And so this is the part for me is, like, I used to, like, I never had grace for people, right? And not once I understood this where they are, it's like, cool. Dude, I know you're a great person and maybe you did this, but it's because this is where you're at. I can have grace for that. Because where changes instantly. But what you are doesn't change. Yeah. So, like, if I don't like what you are, then I'm just not I'm going to choose to not have you anywhere in my life.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, that's really good, right? Because I mean, I guess my thought's always been in empathy is being empathetic is just understanding why they're there, where they're at, but not necessarily looking at it from a sympathetic side of, right?
Sympathy is understanding where someone is. Empathy is being where that person is.
That's good.
And so there's a huge difference, and that's where like a lot of these people are like, that's where you a lot of empaths, people that really feel what other people feel, those are some of the most unhappy people
because they're always putting themselves in those people's shoes almost.
And part of it is because they don't have the stability in their system.
They don't know where they're at.
So then they end up where those people are, and that's not a good place.
That's good, dude. Let's talk about, we'll wrap up here, but let's talk about the, right now, obviously you were hyper focused on, the gym, growing that, right? And even your work was a lot of gym focused.
Yep.
Now you're kind of transitioning to more of the entrepreneur executive. Is one of those reasons because you feel that, those are almost the people that you need to be going at to kind of change, right? You want to be this change agent essentially, right? And that those people have a lot of influence, a lot of power in a sense to help become the example for the people around them. Is that kind of your shift? Or
for me, like I said, I love serving people and helping people. And part of that for me as a personal mission is about impacting and inspiring as many lives as possible. And, when I look at the entrepreneur and the business leaders, number one, I am that person. So when it's like, why shifting this? Because I am that person, number one. So I understand it intimately in a way that other people just aren't going to if they haven't lived that life, right?
Yeah.
The other side of it is an impact piece. So like, I've gone in, worked with like professional sport teams, work with special operations in the military. Like I love doing that work. It's a lot of fun because I love the work I do regardless of who it's with, right? And when I go in and an entrepreneur shifts their orientation and stability, now all of a sudden, it's not just me impacting them. It's not just them and their family. It's the people that work for them, those people's families, right? And so when you look at this exponential impact of how it moves out, for me, working with entrepreneurs and business leaders is about how do I take this amazing information I have and create as much impact in the world as quickly as possible. Yep. And the other side of that is like, I'm a high drive person. And so I prefer to be around other high drive people.
Yeah.
And so working with other entrepreneurs and business leaders, they're high drive. So we relate and resonate on so many levels. And so I can understand where they're at.
And they can understand you better too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so for me, it really is like, I am that person. I love to be around that person, and shifting that person where they are in the world, their orientation and stability, it creates a ripple exponential effect. Like I call it a core philosophy, and you shift this at the core, that entrepreneur, that business. And when you get out to those distal layers, even vendor partners, right? Yeah. It becomes this tidal wave of change. Mm-hmm. And so for me, working with one person who, it's not that work is any less powerful in that individual. Yeah. It's just that if I work with the person at the bottom of the organization, their change is their change in their immediate family and those people around. Whereas working with the entrepreneur and the business leader, it becomes this tidal wave that expands. It becomes a ripple effect, a butterfly effect, where this person is in a different place. Where they are is different. And now thousands of people have been impacted like that. And for me, that fulfills my mission of impacting and inspire as many lives as possible.
Yeah, that's powerful, dude. Man, incredible, bro. I appreciate you coming
on.
Thanks,
brother.
Man.
It was awesome conversation, man. And thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, brother. Love what you're doing, man.
Of course,
Love
man.
what you're doing.
And, what's the best way for people to connect with you? I mean, obviously, you got a big mission ahead of you, right? And so, maybe even saying, like, is there qualifications, essentially, if someone want to reach out and kind of like, how do they either connect with you, or is there certain types of things that you're looking to connect with, and kind of give us a little
I definitely for me, Instagram is one of the best places. So it's JL Holdsworth it's JL_Holdsworth on Instagram. My website, jlholdsworth.com, under construction right now, but that'll be up soon. But both of those places are great places to connect with me. And I think if people are interested in doing any private work or having me into the business, they can send me an email. It's just jl@jlholdsworth.com. So it's
I'll make sure I put
simple.
all that in the show notes and stuff too, so anybody can get that contact.
Yeah, super simple.
Yeah, man. Dude, incredible, Jay. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks,
today,
brother.
man.
Appreciate it, brother. Thanks, man.
See you, man.